In my last video, I talk about how BlazBlue has some of the best single-player content of this console generation, with the latest installment, Central Fiction, taking literally dozens of hours to see everything that game has to offer. And in this video, I'm going to give a general overview of BlazBlue Central Fiction's basic system mechanics. This game was released in Japanese arcade before it came to consoles, and was a pretty big hit in Japan, and hopefully after the end of this video you'll understand why. So with all that said, let's get into it.
That was the original plan, at least. Allow me to explain. As I was working on my tutorial video for this game, I stumbled across another video, which is the tutorial that covers an early installment in the series, that being Chrono Phantasma. Here's the thing though, that tutorial goes over most of the mechanics currently found in Central Fiction, as Central Fiction is more of an evolution of Chrono Phantasma. So to me, there's no point in making the tutorial for this game if there's one already made. Now, I did start working on my tutorial before I came across this video, which I will show you now to give you an idea of what this game is like. So here it is. In terms of arcade layout, BlazBlue uses numpad notation, which is a system of notation that many other air dashers use, like Guilty Gear and Persona 4 Arena. This is based on the number arrangement found on a standard keyboard, or if you're using a PlayStation controller, the directional pad. For example, in terms of movement, pressing forward on the D-pad would be interpreted as inputting 6 using the numpad notation system, and pressing back on the D-pad would be interpreted as pressing 4. And speaking of movement, I'm going to explain the movement options you have available to you while on the ground. You can walk forward, backwards, run forward, and back step. Some characters are unable to run forward and have dash steps as a replacement. And at this point, some of you may be thinking that dash steps put you at a disadvantage against characters that can run forward, but worry not, as this was an intentional decision by the developers, and I'll explain why that is later on when I cover the offensive section of the tutorial. In terms of movement options in the air, you can do a regular jump, double jump, and air dash forward as well as backwards. The basic rule of movement in the air is after your initial jump, you can either decide to do another jump or an air dash, but not both. There are a few exceptions to this rule, such as Bang, who was able to air dash after jumping a second time after his initial jump. On the other side of the spectrum, you have Tager, a character who's very limited in mobility options, being unable to jump more than once, and unable to run forward, only walking very slowly. And knowing how to utilize a character's movement options is a very important step in order to achieve victory. And that about wraps up the general rules for movement.
Now, before I go over the general offense of the game, I should state that BlazBlue is a 4-button fighter, and using the notation is stated as such. Pressing A for weak attack, B for medium attack, C for strong attack, and D for drive attack. And that last button is attached to a mechanic that I personally feel separates this game from almost every other fighter. To put it simply, the drive button lets you gain access to unique actions specific to that character. For example, Ragnar's drive allows him to steal health from the opponent if he hits them with any variation of that attack. Notice how Ragnar's life goes up with each hit during this combo. And one of the trade-offs that Ragnar has in exchange for this ability is having some of the lowest health in the game, taking a lot more damage with each hit than most other characters would. Then we have Jin, a character whose drive allows his various D attacks to be able to freeze the opponent when they are hit. Since they are unable to block in this state, this allows him to continue the assault. Relius's drive allows him to summon a puppet to fight by his side, and that puppet can be used to attack in multiple directions. This includes the front, from behind, from above, even in the air. That being said, Relius pays a price for having his assistant around, and that his doll meter drains slowly while she's summoned. In addition, any special attack she performs drains the meter even faster, and once it's out, Relius is unable to summon her for a period of time, leaving him defenseless and lacking in mix-up options and pressure. Earlier I mentioned in the video how certain characters were intentionally designed with limited movement. For example, Valkenheim being only able to dash step forward instead of running. This is due to his drive, which allows him to turn into a werewolf. While in this state, his movement becomes exponentially faster, which allows him to do exceedingly well in neutral. That being said, he is unable to block in this form, and once his wolf gauge goes out, he is forced to revert back to his human form, and will be unable to turn back into a wolf again until the meter is full. Also be aware that certain actions in wolf form, such as jumping and special attacks, decrease his gauge even faster. Kagura's drive ability puts him in stances that connect to other abilities. On top of that, he has 3 stances depending on what direction he presses the drive in, and pressing A, B, or C while in these stances activates the stance unique attack. For example, pressing B while in neutral stance gives him a command grab, and pressing B while in his crouching stance has him doing a sliding attack, which on the first hit, hits opponents not blocking low. And pressing B while in his forward stance allows him to slide through opponents and hitting them from behind. And again, I didn't even get into the A and C variations, which change what type of attack comes out depending on his stance. And hopefully with me explaining these few examples, I've given you enough of an idea of the impact this mechanic can have. And with over 33 characters, most of which being completely unique with one another, with their own drive abilities, special moves, walk and run speeds, and the startup of their attacks, and you're looking at one of the most unique fighting games out there. So yeah, that was a bit of what I worked on. I highly recommend you look at this video if you're interested in learning the game to the best of your ability, because I definitely think it'll help you in the long run. Would have gone over everything myself, but this video already does that, so there's really no point. And that about wraps it up for this video.